Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Len Bellavia is the founding partner at Bellavia Blatt, PC, dealerlaw.com, a great friend of the dealer, great friend of the Fixed Ops community. Len, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Ted, it's always great to be with you. Thanks for inviting me back.
Len, we got a lot happening. Here we are, mid-November, coming into the holidays. There's been a lot of things in the news this year. I want to talk to you, want to pick your brain on a couple things. First, on the manufacturer side, just a little while back, we got the news in terms of what Ford is going to require dealers to do on the EV side. And I know I've seen different things where you have weighed in on that. What are some of your thoughts?
Well, it was interesting to see how that whole saga unfolded because before Ford had all its dealers out in Vegas, all the headlines were about direct sales and minimal involvement of dealers and fixed pricing and a whole host of things that got dealers very concerned. And then, people like you and I and other attorneys that specialize in this area weighed in, and then dealer associations weighed in. So it probably is not a coincidence that Ford backed off of that. And although they created a whole other problem, which is the dollar investment that they're asking dealers for, they seem to have abandoned the notion of selling direct to consumers. So my hats are off to the ATAEs and Dealer Council and your show for enlightening dealers on what they should be thinking and how they should approach this. But the franchise laws in all 50 states essentially prohibited Ford and others that were thinking along those same lines from selling direct to consumers. So I think in part Ford was testing the resolve of dealers, and they saw the pushback was overwhelming from dealer associations who effectively said, look, if this is what you're intending to roll out, expect major pushback. And I'm sure in the boardrooms, there were some discussions so that by the time everyone got together in Vegas, they pretty much departed from that strategy, although they opened up this whole idea of having dealers invest in an infrastructure of, in some cases, over $1 million. And if you're a Ford and a Lincoln dealer, it's over $2 million. So it's caused dealers to sit back and say, well, let's see, there's a 5% market share for EVs right now. That includes Tesla. So if you take Tesla off of that, it's probably 3%. And everything a dealer does, I mean, they're obligated to their shareholders, whether it's the dealer and his wife or his family or a board, or if it's a private equity group, investors, they have a fiduciary obligation to make smart financial decisions. And usually that's based on return on investment. So how do you justify a $2 million investment if you're a Ford Lincoln dealer for an electric vehicle that may not really see the light of day in true, market share parlance, if you will, for 10 years or more? And I've listened to people on your show, Ted, that have prognosticated about when EVs will really have a meaningful share in the marketplace. Some people will tell you 5 to 7 years, other 10 to 15 years. Some have a more cynical view. So you put all that together and you ask a Lincoln and Ford dealer to write a check for $2 million. I don't know, and I've spoken to plenty of my clients, and none of them are raising their hand to do that. I mean, publicly, they may talk the talk so that they sound like they're cooperating, but when the day comes, which has been pushed off, interestingly, by Ford into another month or so, I'm sure to measure the response. And I know Ford is out there in droves meeting with their dealers. And the intel that I'm getting is that there has not been an overwhelming positive response by dealers. So that's why I say, these things aren't as important as some people make it seem, because ultimately manufacturers have to do what's best in terms of gaining market share and retaining market share. So if these things are going to fall flat, then presumably Ford will retrench and reconfigure how they're going to introduce EVs to the marketplace. There are bigger and more pressing issues that dealers, in my opinion, have to face, and I think it ties in perfectly with fixed ops personnel, because the next issue for fixed ops people to confront is over the air updates or vehicle connectivity, and that's something that there's a learning
coming,
curve
Len.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
that you know what? No matter what the prognosticators say, that is here and that is coming rapidly. And I don't think there's too many deniers on that. So I want to talk to you today about those connected vehicles, those over-the-air updates, because Steve Greenfield did a segment here on the Roundtable Automotive Ventures, and he talked about it last time as well. That is coming, and there are billions of dollars now that are going to be at stake, that are going to be collected. And who's going to get those? What is the dealer's share? Is there a dealer's share? And it will likely impact, we're hearing, the way dealers are staffed from here on in. So a lot of implications on this over-the-air update, Len.
yeah, and this is very timely, Ted. I would deputize your fixed ops audience here to really try and educate the dealers and the decision makers at the dealership, because this is really foreboding. And Stellantis and GM have already announced, even as far back as a year ago, that they expect that this over-the-air update transition will generate about $25 billion a year to these manufacturers. Now,
Billion.
billions, not millions, each year. Now, multiply that by each manufacturer. Where is that money coming from? It's coming out of the hide of the fixed ops departments of these dealerships. So this is really a call to action by dealers who should inform their state association personnel and their 20 groups and dealer council, because if it's not stopped, and now we're starting to see state dealer associations actually pass legislation or introduce legislation to try and put a reasonable framework together so that manufacturers don't just raid the cookie jar of all the franchise dealers in the country by trying to take this service department business and deal direct with consumers. Now, to try and oversimplify this, and I'm sure your audience is somewhat aware of this, but consider your cell phone, right? We're all used to having over-the-air updates. You wake up and you see that your phone is updating. Well, not so easy with a car. Now, the two states that I think are out front on this are West Virginia, and most recently New Jersey has introduced a bill. But just to give you an example, I don't think anyone quarrels with the idea that consumers, all of these technological advances should be consumer friendly. So no one is trying to erode, the idea that consumers should be able to get rudimentary updates. So, for example, the infotainment system or the navigation system, if the manufacturer wants to change the color of an icon or improve, one of the applications, there's no need to take the car into the service department for something so innocuous. But there are some over-the-air upgrades that do involve the underlying functionality of the vehicle. For example, the braking system, or certain safety and security features, such as lane change warnings, things that really go to the heart of the operation of the vehicle. Tesla has tried to do that over the air, and they've been given somewhat of a free pass, and I think that's more political in nature and not regulatory. But if a manufacturer wants to put a car out there, they have to go through regulatory hurdles to make sure every component of the car is working in accordance with manufacturer specifications. So who is a manufacturer to say, all right, we passed that, now a month later we're going to change the braking system?
And you're right, Tesla got a pass on that big time, because I didn't hear anything about any compliance with any regulation to do that. And it opened a lot of eyes at the OEMs. And now we're talking the potential of, like you said, all these many billions of dollars.
Well, Tesla gets a free pass. This is more a political discussion than anything else. Regulators, I'm sure, like everybody else, are afraid to look like they're not consumer friendly. But if a legacy manufacturer plans on doing something that's going to impair the underlying structural integrity of a vehicle, then they had better make sure that they comply with all regulatory mandates. So that's an argument in favor of having certain upgrades done at the dealership. And the best example that I could think of is, the manufacturers, if you read their literature, will say, well, don't worry, all these over-the-air updates are going to be done at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're sleeping, or if you prefer, during the day while you're in the office. But what happens when a manufacturer is attempting to re-regulate the braking system in the car, and at 3 a.m. one morning you're taking your wife to deliver a baby, or you're going to an emergency room, and now the vehicle is in the middle of an upgrade, and that could adversely affect the functionality of the braking system. So, there's an example of why that type of an upgrade should be performed at a dealership, because the car is going to be returned to the consumer safely with the upgrade of 100% completed. So trade associations have to be willing to advocate for those type of repairs to be done at the dealership, and make the point that this is not to be anti-consumer or pro-dealer in terms of revenue raising. It's just in the best interest of the consumers that some of the more serious upgrades be done under the guidance of a technician who's trained, and not over the air where there can be some problems. So West Virginia and New Jersey have tackled that. New Jersey has effectively said, if you're going to do those type of updates for items that are already in the vehicle. So for example, if a vehicle comes and a customer purchases it with heated seats, mm-hmm. or lane change warnings, you can't charge a customer for the manufacturer to flick on the switch. That's double billing, right? The customer paid for the car with those items in it. Presumably it's in the MSRP.
Yes.
So to charge the customer again to turn on the app that implements that feature in the vehicle is charging the customer twice. So it's really a deceptive trade practice prohibition that New Jersey is addressing. And in West Virginia, they were the pioneer on this. They actually passed this legislation that said that if a customer, and there were many customers who don't feel comfortable doing an over-the-air update, so to the extent they go to their dealer, which many will, and say, can you assist me with reprogramming this feature on my car, then the dealer should be compensated just like it was performing a warranty service. So, well, it sounds kind of, manufacturers have taken a very simplistic view of this. Well, how could dealers complain about this? This is all in the interest of enhancing the customer experience. Well, it's really not. It's really not, because to the extent that you're encroaching on consumer safety, then what's in the best interest of the consumer is to have certified technicians perform the upgrade, and the dealer get paid to make sure that the upgrade is being performed in accordance with, regulatory specification. So there's a whole lot that meets the eye here. And I think fixed ops people have to explain to their dealers that this is going to, it's bad enough that EVs have, 60% less moving parts. So,
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of people that are concerned about what that will mean to the gross profit in the service department. By the way, on that note, there are many people who think that EVs will present an even better opportunity right. in terms of fixed ops, because warranty revenues will increase if a battery needs to be changed, right? If the battery costs $6,000, then a dealer should be getting over $10,000 to replace that part under warranty. So it's not necessarily a problem, to have EVs flooded, have the service department, servicing EVs. But more than that is dealers have to be aware that manufacturers are looking to take a bite out of their warranty revenues by having these over-the-air updates. So there's a whole host of things that state associations should be addressing now before this gains traction. And New Jersey and West Virginia are leaders in that regard. And I would suspect that state associations are going to be calling their legal advisors to figure out, what should be put in place before consumers are negatively impacted.
Len, you always give us great reminders as to the basics and fundamentals in our industry. Everybody, Len Bellavia is the dealer's attorney. All right. And, what you were mentioning earlier, I cannot imagine those OEMs earlier in that conversation would have wanted to walk into a courtroom and see Len Bellavia on the other side. You do a magnificent job. I know you work with a lot of dealers that attend and are involved with the conference. And Len Bellavia, everybody, this is what he does. His family's been in the automotive business. And Len, it's very refreshing to get your commentary on what's current. And, on behalf of the Fixed Ops community, I appreciate that very much.
Well, never a dull moment, Ted. There's always something to talk about, as you know. And as long as there are manufacturers and dealers, I don't think we'll be at a loss to figure out what to discuss.
Len, I want to wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. And again, thank you for all that you do for automotive retail.
Thank you, Ted. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family as well.
Len Bellavia, everybody, the founding partner from Bellavia Blatt, dealerlaw.com. reach out to him, make an acquaintance. I assure you it would be a great one to have. Len Bellavia here at the Fixed Ops Roundtable.